Yeah. I'm going to say a few things about the article, not a whole bunch, just to kind of get through it pretty quickly. Call your attention to some things. You notice that she begins by explaining that we typically think of psychopaths as being just, murderous villains, and that's not the case. Most psychopaths are not that. I was talking last time about percentages. She says that psychopaths are about 1% of the population. I read estimates as high as 3%. And there's a kind of like this false thing that gets set up sometimes, and she does it here as well, where she's saying because it's 1%, they could be sitting right next to you in class. Yes, it's possible. But the chances of that are relatively slim because of the traits that she talks about in here. In other words, people who are psychopaths tend to kind of gravitate towards certain career fields or non-career fields. What I mean by that, for example, is that I think we mentioned last time, right? Where would you find, in what profession would you find most psychopaths in? Yeah, surgeons, politicians, and lawyers. Yeah. Now that's if they're highly employed. Where do you think you might find a lot of psychopaths also? Thinking outside of employment. Jail. Yeah, prison. Because psychopaths, again, we have this idea that psychopaths are really smart because that's how they're portrayed in movies and TV shows and things like that. But psychopaths have an IQ distribution that's very similar to the general population. You have some very intelligent psychopaths. You have some, very not intelligent psychopaths. But most kind of sit in this little mid thing right here. And so the psychopaths who are highly intelligent tend to gravitate towards those specific fields. The ones that are on the lower end, or even kind of in the middle end over there, in the middle grouping there, they're not going to, obviously end up over there, and so a lot of them end up in prison because of the character traits of a psychopath. And that's what she's kind of like laying out here. What are those kind of those character types? I believe there are 12 altogether that Robert Hare developed, the psychopath checklist that they kind of look for. So the things that she's identified here are kind of overarching things, like Machiavellianism covers a few different of those, few of those things. But if you think in these general terms, these three traits are pretty good at helping you identify people like that. And if you meet someone who does kind of satisfy these criteria, even if they're not a psychopath, it's a pretty good idea to stay away from people like that, as you're going to find. So first off, Machiavellianism. Anybody heard of Machiavelli before? Yeah, he's an Italian political philosopher. He's on our team. And his name has become synonymous with what she mentions here, people who are duplicitous, cunning, and manipulative. Duplicitous, two-faced, cunning, they're clever, and especially in terms of being backstabbers, and they're manipulators. Machiavelli wrote a book called The Prince. It's a really small book, by the way. And in it he talks about how it is that a ruler can maintain power. Now he's not talking in the book about how a ruler should behave. It isn't, here's how you should treat people. He's not making moral judgments that way. He's just saying, you want to stay in power? Here's what you need to do. And the ways in which he talks about doing it are kind of these things, duplicitous, cunning, and manipulative. If you've ever heard the question posed, is it better to be feared or loved? That comes from Machiavelli. He writes a chapter 17, where he talks about the idea that it's better to be feared than loved. It's safer to be feared than loved. And so she gives us a couple of examples here of like Gordon Gekko from Wall Street. If any of you guys grew up in the 80s, you'd know what she's talking about there. But maybe if you haven't, Claire Underwood from House of Cards, Frank and Claire Underwood from House of Cards, if you've seen that on Netflix. So the idea is that psychopaths tend to have these traits right here. And that's because they tend to pursue power. As she points out here, they disregard moral and social rules. They lie, they manipulate. They're obsessed with power, and things like that. She points out for people high in this trait, manipulating others is an impulse. Much like an alcoholic has an impulse to drink. So it's just something that is natural to a psychopath, the idea of manipulating and using people. So, questions so far about Machiavellianism? All right, take a look at the next one.